I'd like to invite all of the companies to come forward and join us. It's your turn. It's your time.
Okay, thank you.
We're missing someone. Who are we missing? Caitlin? Hannah? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay, come on in. Yeah, the space, please. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. We are at the late end of the day, but this is the fun part. This is the best part, I would say. This is about each of the companies here asking you all their questions, their challenges, their request for ideas, their request for suggestions. Any question is fair game as it relates to your technology. I'll just pepper that. So let's start with you. Why don't you go ahead and if you'd like to take that. What we would suggest is take 10 minutes. That's maximum. And if you feel like you want to defer your time, you can pass to the next gentleman here next to you, and we can go on. You'll pass for now? All right?
Okay.
Please.
I guess, NOAA projects, SBIRs are mostly products for the public benefit. And so it ends up being the customers are government and nonprofit organizations, conservation groups. So my question to the group and the panel would be, what are your recommendations for targeting for-profit clients? For example, insurance companies, coastal developers, environmental engineering firms.
Would anybody like to know? Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Huge amount of direct customer discovery. So, look for opportunities of concentration of meetup groups, industry trade shows, to just go and not be selling, but asking lots of questions. There's just no shortcut to doing it. I could do a shameless plug and say that's some of the things that Braid Theory does, but it's also, there's no substitution to your own customer discovery to start the process. And again, to think about creating a deck that offers some potential use cases where you can help that end user put themselves into it, so you're not always only talking about your government customers.
Do you have a second question, Stefan?
I was just going to add on to Anne's comment. I'll speak to insurance. It's a very small group of people, and everybody seems to know everyone. So tap into someone maybe on the commercial side who has sold to insurance before, and show up at the conferences where they are. And it's surprising it's not that crowded. You can get a lot of insight, a lot of this direct engagement, and people will refer once they're excited about your product. They'll say, "Hey, I've got someone here who also would love this," or it's a small group. They're very, very excited about technology, and maybe sometimes the institutions are slower to move, but there's little pockets of innovation there where what you're developing could be really applicable. I can send you some names of people too.
Thank you, Sarah. Anybody else? Any thoughts, suggestions?
Well, I would say that, our company, we've attended half a dozen trade shows this year. And this is the first year we've actively done that. And I found that we had a lot of, we didn't even go with the idea of, we're going to sell a unit or we're going to do this, that. We just wanted to meet the customers. We just wanted to go and get our name out there and stand next to our competition and be able to answer questions and just interact. And we ended up in one of the trade magazines. They did a 6-page article on us. We met one of our prospective customers at one of these shows, and we're now involved in a development with them. So I would say find your niche, find the trade shows, and do the trade show circuit and interact with them.
So I know, just to catch up on what Anne was saying and what Zara was following up on, I know every one of you, for very good reason, had the presentation that essentially talks about you and what you've done. I think you've got to flip it a little bit and talk about the problem that you're trying to resolve for that individual set of customers that you want to attract. What is their experience? What are they looking at? What are their pain points? And then look at what they've already been doing to show how you can actually be either a better alternative or something that can fit into what they're doing. And that's something that I think I don't see very often, unfortunately. It's very reasonable to understand why. You're excited about what you do, and I think what you do is really remarkable, but you've got to be able to see it in the context of what they are going through and what they've already done. On the insurance side that Zara was talking about, that's a small community, by the way, Zara, right? You know the conferences, all the conferences that they go to. And they do talk to each other. And there is a real issue. I mean, I think every one of you has an opportunity to think about the insurance, reinsurance market. These are really difficult places that are going to have a lot of pain in the next few years. And so I think every one of you has that. By the way, before we go on, I just want to introduce the new CEO of Synthetic, who's here, a Los Angeles native. That's why I wanted to introduce him. Please, what's your name?
Brian Watson.
Brian Watson he's the new CEO of Synthetic. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Anyway, that was just a comment, and thank you for your point as well about the trade shows.
Yeah, I don't have a question or comment at this point, so.
Okay, we'll give Rohit. Sean wanted to address this question as well. Go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead.
Thought it would be worth mentioning, you did the sea vegetation thing. So it is helpful in the sort of founder entrepreneur journey, if you want to call it that, to remember that you can scale outside of your solution set. So if you have a technology, just remember that there may be other things you haven't thought of yet, or other markets that might have a bitter pain point to solve. So you incubate it in one problem set, but you can sometimes shop it or pivot it or reframe it in another sector that can benefit from what you're doing in a way you might not have thought of. And so it's worth remembering that that can happen, and does sometimes, instead of just trying to continue to narrow it down so much. And it's sometimes worth thinking about if you've considered your other options before you really drill down into one particular way. My name is Sean Hutchinson. I work with Gunjan and Brianne. We have a few projects funded by the USDA and DOE in rapid decarbonization, really cross-cutting work. So you try to solve one problem, then you've got to back up and solve other problems, and how you integrate alignment of value production and bringing it into market and so forth. So, yeah. I know what he's not saying to you, but you should always. No.
One other thought is look at complementary champions in service providers, engineering firms, environmental researchers, construction engineering, contractors of various types who might see your solution as complementary to what they're doing, or they see a business opportunity to provide consulting services in addition to what your technology solution is.
You might want to talk to Jeff, by the way, who knows a lot of people in that area as well. Yeah. Good, thank you.
Stefan, would you have any other questions? You forfeit? All right.
Sure, I'll maybe ask the flip side of that question. I'd be interested to hear any advice or strategies on how folks have gone or what resources are available to kind of make that transition on the government side from a seed-funded technology to getting to procurement or back to contracting. And I know that's sort of maybe been a downplayed focus of the NOAA program more recently, but that could also include other government agencies. So I guess maybe that same sort of question, but for the government piece as well.
Would anybody would like to respond?
Yeah, Sean, I thought you would, yeah.
I have had to work with a lot of different agencies and learn about the way they work, and they all work differently in trying to find like post-phase 2 funding. It's worth the diligence of doing, and having a phase 2 means that some agencies will look at you differently. That you have a phase 2 means you can possibly find funding in the DOE
Yeah,
as a phase 3 or a non-competitive contract. Fundraising in private equity markets right now is really challenging, and you have to weigh your benefits in terms of your outcome, how much you want to preserve your impact and your runway and so forth. So finding other places where you can get validation point, proof of concept funding, demonstration funding, even loans. You had some kind of like AI work I think you were doing. And if you find a way of working that into their mission priorities, you might be surprised. The DOE is a huge agency, and they have a lot of different offices. Offices act like funnels of money, and labs work a little differently, but they have a lot of funding mechanisms. And USDA has 4 or 5 that are, 3 of them or 4 are not SBIR focused. So there are ways of getting additional research funding, and in some ways you can work it into commercialization or demonstration pathways. You just have to, you gotta go search for it, and you gotta really network and work those channels. Like, there are definite pointers for it if you want. I can give you more specifics, but there is funding out there. You might be surprised.
I think one of the issues that we've seen, and by the way, David Barakoff, if you want to comment on the DOE's opportunities, because we're very familiar with DOE, long-standing relationship. It's a very good suggestion. DOE has a great thing. I'll come back to you, Jennifer. Just give me a second. The one thing to keep in mind is if you are an SBIR company, try thinking broadly and more laterally beyond SBIR, because it's very easy to get very obsessed with the SBIR program. There's a ton of other new things coming in, and DOE, as an example, has a number of lateral programs that go well beyond SBIR. In fact, they don't even have any reference back to SBIR. Genevieve, I was going to come to you anyway.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment, despite the shift in focus on the front end of not wanting people to come in specifically pitching something to NOAA, we are absolutely fully supportive, and part of Derek's role is also connecting our awardees with government customers as well, and helping you navigate that process. So just wanted to put that out there for you. And we are not opposed to government customers or NOAA as a customer. We're just opposed to people specifically targeting NOAA as a customer.
And only NOAA, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
One thing
thanks.
to,
Hope I didn't
as an
overstate
SBIR
that.
company, you know this. Do you all know this, that once you have an SBIR in phase, I think it's phase 2 only, right, Genevieve? You don't have to compete to sell to the government. You know that, right? It's part of the mandate in the SBIR program. So you can sell directly without having to go through a competition, and you can do sole source, essentially. So we've done this before with many clients of ours in the NIH, to the VA and other institutions. Go ahead.
Phase 1 or phase 2.
Phase 1
you
or
don't,
phase 2.
You
There you
don't
go.
have to have gotten a phase 2. You
There
get
you
the
go.
sole source authority with just phase 1.
So, government customers, Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, these are all things that you should be looking into. I know it's tough because you're running a business and you're running all the P&L, and then you have to do research as well, but this is, nobody said it was going to be easy, right? So
One more thing on sole source. So you have a NOAA SBIR award, phase 1, phase 2, as Genevieve said, doesn't matter. You could go to DOD, you could go to DOE, you could go to the White House, you could go to any part of the federal government administration. As long as they have an opportunity for you, you can ask for it, saying, I would like to apply for sole source. That's the beauty and the advantage of the SBIR award. It gives you that opening unlike any other.
yeah, absolutely. By the way, USDA is the other one, okay? Smaller agency, but they've got many different sides to them. It says ARS, the Agricultural Research Service. There's a new program called MPPRI. A lot of them looking for data sourcing, data identification of different frameworks, all of this stuff. I mean, Sean, you know this. Yeah, go ahead.
So the one caution I would say about continually looking for these government sources of funding is chasing the funding and getting mission creep, right? Because you keep kind of going after where the money is happening, and it's sort of tangential, and it's sort of close to what you want, and it sort of gets you to the next step, but not quite. So other ways of kind of also tapping into government funding is looking at specific funding sources that are to a more end customer that you can then be contracted
Correct.
to. So for example, Ed, we were talking about FEMA grants. So there's FEMA funding for security grants. There's different themes and topics around that. Ports can apply for this grant funding. Maybe it's on a topic that is then what you're looking for. You're selling to the ports. They're using the grant money to contract with you.
Yeah, I think looking for partners every time you're applying, even for government funding, actually strengthens your overall government application anyway. Yes, sir.
I think maybe
Yeah,
I
go
should
ahead.
have clarified, it wasn't so much about how do we go out and find more research grants to continue the development, but how do we, go out and find opportunities to use the government as an actual customer.
Deployment, yeah, for a customer.
Thanks, Ann.
That's part of this, like, still want to get some advantage from the government funding, but get
Mhm.
more into it.
So this, I think you're after procurement stuff as well, right? Which has always been the bugbear in government funding anyway, the very difficult procurement pathways. They're supposedly making it easier with these new kinds of things that are on the market. My concern is the incumbents are already there, so you need to go to some of those incumbents, just, defensively go to those incumbents and start to work with them to say, look, I can give you a competitive advantage. That's what you need to say. Yes, sir. Army Corps of Engineers.
Frank
yeah.
Holcomb, Army Corps of Engineers. So on the DoD side, it's useful to learn about the military requirements because everything is requirements driven. And certainly any of the DoD folks, myself included, will help you understand some of our requirements. As far as solicitations, sam.gov, I'm sure you are aware of that.
I
That's
think
a
they're
great
all SAM. You all get SAM certification.
So-
Every
so
one of them has SAM.
great
yeah.
resource. It used to be FedBizOps, which you can look through different solicitations that are out there. And I'll just mirror the other gentleman's comment that technology demonstrations, I just came last week from DC, CERTUP and ESTCP, our technology demonstration programs and R&D, so that they have open solicitations now even, and in January another one will come out for those opportunities. So.
These acronyms, you can do a whole hula hoop dance with them. I mean, my gosh.
Yes.
Jesus, what did you just come up? What did you just say? CERTA? What?
CERTUP, SERDP, is Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program. That's a DoD R&D funded program. Its sister component is ESTCP, Echo Sierra Tango Charlie Papa.
Yeah. Okay.
And Environmental
Got it.
Security Technology Certification Program. That's a demonstration validation program.
Wow.
And
These
that solicitation typically comes out in January.
And what is that kind of? What is the bottom line figure for that? How much of the solicitations goes to the companies themselves? And
So typical, I used to be on the
Your
selection
ward.
committee for
Yeah.
ESTCP. Typical projects, depending on what the technology is, 2 to 3 year project, maybe $1 million to $1.5 million would be competitive. If it's a microgrid or something that's hardware intensive, it may be a little bit more. And there are different areas. So installation resilience is one that I work in, that space. But they have environmental remediation, they have a lot of different other areas.
And at the end of this kind of process, assuming that they have the courage and the stamina to go after a $1 million grant over 2 years, is there some opportunity to upsell and to get into a contract of record, perhaps at a much higher level? Because there's revenue opportunities that they have, but there's also revenue costs, right? Of
Yes.
going down that particular path, which is what I think Ann was saying.
Absolutely. So one of the goals of CERTUP and ESTCP is to validate technologies. And by getting that validation, you're basically getting, free advertising. Those reports are publicly available. It's all distribution A at that level, so anybody can download them. And you've got a testament from a customer that you've worked with.
NOAA,
The-
in this case, so is
Yes.
an agency that has already validated that by giving them an award, right? So that's a big deal.
Process for this
Presumably.
is relatively easy. A pre-proposal, I think 5 to 8 pages maximum. If you get past the pre-proposal stage, the chances of winning a full proposal are pretty good. It's about a 50-50 chance after that, if you're invited to develop a full proposal.
Did you say you're on the selection committee?
I was.
Can
on
we
this-
get to you?
I
talk
was on
about
the
this?
selection committee, but
Just kidding.
anyone who has any questions, you can certainly email me, and be happy to talk to you.
It's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. This is the kind of intelligence we need to be able to gather internally here. And just one point on that, by the way. even though you've gone through this program, you're going to be with us forever, okay? So you're now part of the kind of family, and we're going to bother you, and you're going to bother us like all family members do, and hopefully we'll be of use to you moving forward, okay? Points, any questions, points of comments from everybody? Amar, how about you? Anything that you have to add? No?
All right.
Farida, anything? On some of the points these companies have made.
Thank you, Rohit. Hi, Farida Fatui, Reality 2. One point in going after both expanded opportunities with other government agencies and in the private sector is to be sure that the value proposition and the difference of your technology is presented clearly as a solution for a customer, both in terms of big picture, what's a big picture solution that you offer, and then in the context of different markets in which you solve unmet needs. When it's presented that way, it becomes more of a relevant commercialization opportunity, and it will become more of interest both to government agencies in terms of providing funding and in terms of private sector customers. But your value proposition needs to be really clear. What do we do, what problem we solve, and why we do it better than anybody else? Not your technology, your solution.
The reason why I think Farida is hopping on that also is because she expresses those things in something called a website, which I know many of you don't know what a website is, but because, I mean, some of the websites we've seen on a regular basis for grantees, the federal government, I'm not talking about this group here, okay? So don't take it personally, are nothing short of absolute horror, right? I mean, it becomes like a technical research paper that you're going through, and you just have no idea where it's going to start and stop. And I think that's what Farida is referring to. We have helped tons of companies actually really express their value proposition in ways that are attractive. Because you know what? Everybody has IADD, you know, Internet Attention Deficit Disorder. It comes in one and goes really fast out, and they don't have the patience to think through these things anymore, to sit around. So I think you've got to really have this message pop for them, right? Right, Zara? You've seen this, right? You Google it all the time. You know?
So actually, I don't have any questions, but I want to say this is a great program, and I really enjoyed being a part of it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to take your turn?
You have a nice big partner that is likely to get into a bear hug with you, Esri, right? you want that, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
One topic we didn't talk as much about today, and I think you all already are bringing this at the stage you're at, is the team. The core team right now where you are is like the technical founder, and I think the big step you're probably going to hit on after you get your phase 2 and your first grant and your seed and everything is the commercialization and those early sales and marketing hires. I just wanted to highlight how important that is. You all have built companies and you have friends who've done it. But that's one thing we didn't talk as much about, probably not relevant at this stage, but that's the make or break for the next phase. Once you have de-risked, and I see some smiles here from Ed and others.
You wouldn't believe how many marketing solicitations I get per day. I'm on LinkedIn, and about 10 a day, people ask me about marketing. And are you hiring for marketing? Are you hiring for marketing? Let me redo your website. Let me do it. And it's like, I keep saying, no. Because we're not at that stage, you know. I'm not ready to take on a salesperson per se. You know, we're doing early sales. We're doing early customer acquisition. I can handle that. And our other partner, Joe Dom, I mean, he's a real salesman. I mean, real salesman. And we can handle that right now. I wish they weren't hitting me up right now. I wish they were hitting me up, say, in a year. I might be ready to talk to them then, but I'm just not ready to talk to them. But it's a constant deluge, and I'm sure some of the others have that same experience.
So why don't you do this? Why don't you put on your LinkedIn page, I'm not looking for marketing hacks, okay? I'll let you know in this space when I'm looking for one. You're going to get that. If you're out there as a company, you're going to get that, right? I mean, you have to just accept it. And also something, else, and Zara, this might be something that relevant to what you were saying. You never know, what you come across and what comes across you. You never know. And it may be somebody who has a connection to something, and maybe they're not selling themselves, maybe they're just offering a piece of advice. So just take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the early team because it's so critical. Those first few people will shape so much of your headspace and time. You all know this, you're dealing with it now. And hopefully in a year when you're hiring your marketing team, the chatbots haven't put all of them out of jobs. So we hope that there's still jobs for marketers and others. But I think, as you all know, referrals and others would really help you all. And I think Rohit and his team here are really important people to tap into, and other folks like Anne who have those networks to bring on.
Thank you. Rohit?
So just by the way, Headspace is a mental health app, okay? Just so you know. She just used the term Headspace. That's why it is.
Yeah.
I'm back here. For the gentleman from Sunburst, I keep watching you wave him on. You actually, in your presentation, had a couple of questions that I think are really interesting to come back to. One of the challenges that you mentioned that you have is your lack of IP. You also mentioned that one of the challenges with the pH sensor is actually the housing. And your housing, you can go ahead and customize the housing towards different use cases as you learn more about your customer, and that actually can go under IP, just the housing. I mean, holy cow, if Apple can patent rounded corners, you can patent housing. The second one that I wanted to bring into your attention as an interesting way of doing customer discovery is partnering. I believe somebody up at the judges' table mentioned BioBlitz.
I'm sorry?
BioBlitz.
Okay. Yep.
That is something that happens, and the format that I'm more familiar with it in is on iNaturalist. That is an entire community of citizen scientists, and although $300 might be a little bit high for some of them, for others, they will plop down the money because they're really wanting to contribute to the body of knowledge. I actually have a good friend who discovered an invasive species of sea anemone in Bodega Bay, where it does not normally belong. If he'd been able to take those additional readings, he probably would have. But he didn't know he had a resource. That being said, 6 months after he discovered that species, he also organized a BioBlitz for Pinnacles National Park. The people who are there who are active, who are doing those BioBlitzes, if you can go ahead and be a sponsor, donate some, go on the expedition, talk to the people using it, figure out what they need, and include that housing thing. You want to get that IP, it's pretty nifty to have. But I really like what you're doing for citizen science. I think that's a really important part, actually, of equity, is enabling the regular person to be a scientist. I think that's really important. So please do continue what you're doing with it.
Your name and your company name?
Sorry. My name is Tristan Tucker. I work for a company called VSync as an innovationist. However, I'm also a facilitator for a group called 1 Million Cups, which is about supporting entrepreneurial community and making sure that we give entrepreneurs not just the hard tools that they need, but the community that supports them on their journey.
Thank you, Tristan.
I made it up.
Thank you. Thank you, Tristan. Jeff.
So she said IP, so I had to stand up. I'm Brent Fairbanks. I'm here representing the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody about protecting your intellectual property, either via patents or trademarks or copyrights. And in particular, she was just talking about the concept of design patents, which, as everybody knows, rounded corners became a serious issue in between Samsung and Apple. That's not the type of patent that comes across my desk. I can talk to you a lot more about other things, but I've got a table over here. I'd love to have the conversation, or if you've got a question.
Yeah, I have a question for you. How do you go about protecting, say, workflows and processes, models and algorithms?
processes and algorithms are patent eligible in the United States. So it's one of the types of things that you can get a patent for. There is some complication if you're trying to go for pure software. It needs to be within the context of some kind of a system, with some kind of an impact on a real world thing, and it can't just be an idea that's floating around. Yeah, most of the patents that you'd be looking at are utility patents. So the other types are design and plant patents, which I was actually talking to somebody about earlier today. But I'm thinking most of what I've seen you present today would be covered by utility patents.
Could you patent a block of code?
A block of code by itself would be covered by copyright. The series of steps that the code does would be covered as a utility patent as a method.
Did you have a response to anything that Lee said?
Just thank you.
Rohit, we have a couple of questions and comments from Lisa. She's online.
By the way, just so you know, she needs a round of applause. Do you know that she is in Europe right now, in Luxembourg, where it is
3 a.m. probably in the morning?
3 a.m., and she's participating here, and she's lively and forthright and so on. Lisa, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Gentlemen, the one thing I did note about your presentations, and perhaps this is a very European observation, but you lack diversity on your teams. And perhaps I didn't see all decks in great detail when it came to teams. But if you do want to get into the uncapped buckets of money of the European government that exists certainly in my country, having a diverse team is a very important factor. And it can't only be skill-based diversity. It does matter around both gender and minorities. So just food for thought. A very quick way and a very cost-effective way to rapidly expand your diversity, especially if you're going cross-border, is to tap into virtual internships. Virtual internships will offer you interns in any one of 28 disciplines at no cost for between 3 and 9 months at a time. So if you rapidly want to expand out a section of your capability, and explore some fantastic talent, that is a very, very viable pathway. Having hosted more than 480 interns in the last 3 years across our portfolio companies, I can tell you that many of them go on to become great hires at a very, low barrier to entry. So food for thought. Finally, I wanted to add, I've posted a link in our chat. It's a tool called Fingerprint for Success. It is the tool behind Canva and Atlassian's multi-billion-dollar valuations. You can use this tool to map your team's natural motivations. It will tell you whether or not you are the team that is capable of building and exiting a company valued between 6 million and 1.2 billion, or whether or not you've got the natural motivations to build a 10-year or more sustainable firm. It will also tell you where the differences are in your team and where the chances are for implosion and how to manage those on a person-by-person basis. We do that benchmarking every 6 months in my firm because change your context, change your motivations. And if you're about to hire somebody, it's very difficult to know what's in front of you in the room without unconscious bias. And this tool will give you the data-driven insights to be able to identify the key competencies that you're looking to hire. And let me give you an example. I needed to hire a chief investment officer that had great attention to detail and great attention to compliance, not two of my great traits. 3,500 applicants on LinkedIn, got down to my 15, got down to my 5, did my Fingerprint for Success, hired a person in Mumbai. I probably would never have gone looking in Mumbai. That man has done every deal with us for the last 3.5 years, and we're now at 57% IRR. So, there's a huge potential in trusting the data And clearly Canva and Atlassia's performance demonstrates that.
He was my cousin. I'm just kidding. Lisa, Lisa, the fingerprint for success, you put it in the chat. You might just let them know. It's a great tool, by the way, really remarkable tool. It's driven by AI, by experiential learning, a whole range of things, and a tremendous amount of data that has resulted in this kind of very distilled down ways of being able to operate in very specific ways. So Lisa, thank you for that. She was the one who introduced us to it, by the way. Lisa, what's the cost for companies of different sizes? Do you know?
That link is free. So if you use that, it's free forever. And I think it scales up to 1,000 employees. That's our gift to the universe.
I think it's,
so
that's
it shouldn't cost you
999 more
anything.
employees than you have. Yeah. So I think this link would work for you. Right, Lisa? It would work for them. Up to 1,000
Absolutely.
employees, you said?
Up to 1,000
There
employees.
you go.
And if there's any VCs in the room, we don't make any investment without doing this tool because we obviously want a team that's going to stay together. And in Investable in Australia, we were able to get failure rate down from 97% down to 11%. So if you really want to maximize those great climate pioneers and look after them, it's well worth a look.
Okay, we'll send the link around, but it's in the chat as well here. And let me see, can you do it from up there? Yeah, okay. Okay, great.
Rohit,
Questions? Yeah.
I think, Lisa, you had a question as well with regards to foreign firms and women. Would you like to ask that question, or are you good?
I guess it was really, if you are thinking beyond the US and you are looking to maximize those research dollars, I'm sitting in Luxembourg, you've got uncapped non-dilutive funding here. We've got partnerships with Germany, with the Netherlands, with Singapore, where we can run joint projects. I'm sitting down the road from a space agency that has 75 million in dry powder sitting there waiting for projects. So there's plenty of money in the world. And I love, of course, the NSF and SBIR, having been a recipient twice myself. But there are other buckets of money where you can complement what you have already in your pocket and expand the global viability of your work.
And the question on being able to tap into European parts of money, and there's a lot of money in Europe, she's absolutely right, amazing amount of money, is finding the partners locally, right, Lisa, which in and of itself is an effort. They have to make the effort to do that and to find the synergies that will enable them to get that kind of money. But, you know, Lisa's a great resource, by the way, on a range of different things, and especially because she also understands the US innovation environment with SBIR and so on. Yes, sir.
Going with funding outside the U.S. and Europe, I've looked into that a little bit. Maybe Lisa, you can answer. In Europe, is it the funding? I mean, the SBIR is really nice. I mean, it's straight out. I mean, through NOAA, we got a grant. Through other places, a contract, but straight out money. But with European ones, I'm finding that you need to be match funded. And so it makes it very difficult as a small company to be able to come up with that. So is that true, or are there straight out opportunities in Europe?
You're absolutely right, and that's why R3I Impact Foundation was born, because very often our founders would get the grant, but then they couldn't come up with the money to match it. So yes, you're correct. It typically is between 50 and 30% contribution. There is one other pathway called the European Innovation Council, where you don't have to put in any money at all, and it's 2.4 million non-dilutive, and then up to 15 million euros in blended finance. That has about a 6% success rate. I think that's quite similar to the SBIR in terms of competency. But what you do get, just like you do with SBIR Phase 2, is you get that European seal of excellence, and once you have that, you can sell to anybody. So there is viability in just going for it, even if you don't actually get the grant at the other end.
Okay, thank you.
I had a quick comment about internships that I thought might be beneficial to some of the others. NSF has a program to fund an internship for small businesses in economically impacted zones. Now, we have had one intern that they paid for the entire summer. It didn't cost us anything at all, and we're about to do that again with the second one. You need to find a participating institution and talk to the professors in whatever discipline and see if they know about that NSF program. If they do, I don't know the exact name, but it's like I said, it's through the National Science Foundation, and it's a paid internship for a student for at least one semester. Sometimes it's longer, and it's for small businesses under 50 employees in economically impacted areas. I think we qualified because we were in a hurricane zone, but it was. We employed a PhD student for that summer and then for a following year to develop our stereo camera.
So I just had a comment earlier. Someone asked about IP protections for coding. I think it was maybe Stefan. So I just wanted to comment on that. So particularly with codes or algorithms, one thing to consider is that if you, one thing to consider is that if you are looking at pursuing IP protections, sometimes you have to make that code published, which is something to consider. You may not want to pursue that kind of IP protection strategy. You might want to go with like rigorous NDAs or something else so that you're protecting it without having to publish it. Because once it's published, it can be reverse engineered. So just something to keep in mind. That
my cousin in Mumbai will reverse engineer anything.
For how much?
Go ahead.
Just a couple of more resources. Locally, there's worksource centers, and there's usually funding for on-the-job training and for helping and hiring around low, moderate income staff. We have been able, our own company, to take advantage of that and are getting up to 90% of salary for like 3 months for on-the-job training, depending. So there's some really interesting local resources to support things like that. To reiterate Lisa's comments about EU funding and matching, yes, same, some of the things that we're looking at in Portugal and Spain and et cetera, is requiring that. But interesting is universities are covered 100%. So if you're partnering with universities and you're doing something, that you might be able to structure some things that really brings down the match requirement.
I know I would otherwise turn to Vaishali, but she's very shy. So I will take a little bit. I will take one thing that she's going to talk about, and that is your impact strategy, your impact story, your impact narrative. It is becoming increasingly important in the world, and that is, by the way, not necessarily for the venture guys who are not putting out any checks right now, but corporate America is really looking at this as both an insurance for the backlash that has been coming at them and the fact that they've been accused of greenwashing, but also in general terms, I think what you're doing for the planet, right? So I just wanted to see, Vaishali, if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is something we are trying to do in LARDA while we're supporting our entrepreneurs, is how you can embed impact and sustainability in your strategy and business plan from the get-go. So sustainability is not an afterthought, right? So it's really a different way of doing business where we are not just focused on financial materiality, but also focused on stakeholder materiality, right? So it's not just about that how these external factors are impacting our business, but how is it that our business, our solution, our technology is impacting the people and the planet, right? So that's what double materiality is. So to identify how is it that your technology is impacting the environment, the society, and to embed that in your business planning. So that's what we are fundamentally after. And if this is something you're interested in, we can help you come up with that impact strategy, and then also with impact measurement and management. So after defining your impact goals, how is it that you will measure those impact goals and how you will manage them, right? So Yeah, this is a huge topic, lots to cover under it, but just to think about it, that it's not just about the financial value, but how is it that everything that we are doing is impacting the world around us, is impacting the communities. So, yeah, thank you. Oh, and I did want to mention the NSF program that you were talking about. DOE has a similar program as well. So if anyone here has DOE programs, you can take advantage of those diverse internships as well. Yeah.
So the impact message, which is saying, instead of being an also ran, should be part of the narrative that you have in there, right? I mean, the best messages right now do have that. We've seen that even with some of the stuff that's coming out of Google, right?
I have one topic to add on cloud providers. You all might have multi-cloud strategies, but if any of you are working with one single cloud provider, I highly encourage you to consider their partner programs and others as you get later stage in commercialization, because you have something really unique on top of their infrastructure that can help them sell to some of these corporates you're targeting. So that would be like, I think it's again a little bit too early for this, but maybe in a couple years, or as you're thinking about the kind of infrastructure decisions today, those are players you might want to tap into, because they feel like they have a commodity and they want your unique systems on top of their infrastructure. So it could be something as you're thinking about channel later.
Well, we're going to have these little clips for you to be able to sift through when you're back from this.
So going back on the impact KPIs, Braid Theory and many 37 organizations, including entrepreneur support organizations, investors, family offices, networks, are part of what's called the Thousand Ocean Startups. And there is the impact, there's a navigator system that's an open source to kind of go through quantitative and qualitative analysis to think through impact on ocean. So that can be another resource, and also that then starts guiding when you're looking for funding that is crossover and folks like S2G Ventures, which is tied into the arm of Builders Initiative, which is a Builders Vision.
With us before at LARDA, and she's now with Builders Vision. Jelani, Jelani, thank you so much for coming. You've come in rather late, by the way. I would have liked to have come earlier. But Jelani, thank you. Anne was just talking about Builders. Builders Vision is, by the way, the institution set up by Lucas Walton of the Walton family, who has a net worth, as I've just found out, quite a while ago, of 18 billion, but has set up this extraordinary impact organization that starts with philanthropy, goes to infrastructure, and then goes to the venture capital side, which is S2G Ventures, with whom we've been associated for quite some time. So thank you so much, Jelani. Yes, Hannah. Lisa, go ahead, please.
So I thought it would be worthwhile sharing a war story, because nobody ever shares those. And I'm Australian, so, we always share. But it might help you. We were the recipients of 2 SBIR grants, phase 1 and phase 2. We built a deep neural network compression tool for the edge. We internationalized in 2019. We raised a round of capital from our PhD supervisor, who was American Chinese. We made the mistake of mixing Chinese money and American money on a cap table. We then made the mistake of taking a Chinese distributor because we were working with NVIDIA in China, and we thought that would be a sensible idea to get our technology into the region. Our technology didn't have a kill switch in it. Our technology was exported to 40 oppression countries, and it was used in Chinese military labs. And we had to shut down our beautiful company with the help of the FBI and the DOJ. So it's a very nasty war story, but I think it's a useful one.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Today's news about NVIDIA, did you see that, what's going on with them now, and the warning they got from DOJ and from the administration? So horror story, but worthwhile, because this is a big deal, right? I mean, we've seen this in other innovations that we've actually been part of. One of them is a USDA grantee that had a similar problem, Lisa, only in his case, it was actually a theft from his lab of the IP that was then set up in China as a separate kind of entity. They were sued in China, and they actually won in China. But this is the kind of horror stories that we have to be careful about in internationalization, right, Lisa? That's your point, ultimately, right?
Yeah, and we actually had Chinese exchange students coming in via our university into our company. And that's actually how our technology got into the Chinese military labs. So definitely, you can lock down your American contracts all you want. It's very hard to enforce those once they're offshore. So we also discovered that we had 2 Chinese talents on our board, American Chinese professors, with the greatest of respect. So yeah, you need to do your due diligence on every single hire, no matter who they are, from the leanest level intern all the way through to your board members. And you need to be absolutely judicious about what are the unintended consequences. So if I can leave you with one final lesson, and then I'm going to go to bed. The lesson is to remember your leads. L, is it legal, both by the letter of the law and the spirit of the law? E, is it ethical, not just domestically, but by international standards? A, is it acceptable? That is, by those stakeholders who matter most. D, is it defendable if it ends up on the front page of the New York Times? And sometimes it is legal, it is ethical, it is acceptable, and it is defendable, but it's just not sensible. And then you're often left in still a shade of gray as a founder, and you're staying awake at night. So you only have 2 last questions to ask yourself. Does the decision that you're about to make change who you are as a company? And does this decision that you're about to make change who you are as a person? My humble lessons learned. I hope it helps.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah, I just wanted to give Stratos Solutions a chance here to see if you had any questions for the audience. I know we gave you the hour, but since you're there, might as well.
I think it's been answered, actually. I was going to ask about support for expanding internationally. It's particularly relevant to our business case. I talked about 15 locations. We, to do that right, we've got to employ people at those locations, and it's really looking for support in, making sure we don't make mistakes.
Chinese balloons, yeah.
Yes. So, but I mean, it's reaching out for longer term support.
No, I totally get that, absolutely. And you guys have obviously thought through this anyway, because you're dealing with a whole international set of players anyway, right? Or looking at them as potential competitors.